Welcome to Race Talk with Lane and Eugene, where your voice matters. On this episode, Dr. Willard C. Ashley Sr., race-based trauma expert, educator, activist, and spiritual leader, discusses Black rage, why are Black folks angry? This episode originally aired June 2nd, 2021.
Oh, my beautiful, beautiful people. Welcome back to Race Talk Revolution with Lane and Eugene. I am Eugene, and Race Talk Revolution is where your voice matters. And so we want to start off this afternoon. We want to thank all of our regular supporters. You have sent us such great feedback over the last several weeks, and we want to thank you for all of that. And thank you for letting us know what you're getting out of our weekly conversations, because what you let us know about those helps to inform us on how to continue to bring you the best. Just a reminder that Race Talk is a loving, respectful, inclusive platform designed to encourage constructive dialogue around tough issues pertaining to racial and social injustice. Man, do we have some stuff going on these days. It is a safe space for people of all backgrounds to share, to learn, and grow their anti-racism muscles. In our Race Talk community, we practice racial inclusive love, radical inclusive love. Even when we don't understand or agree with what's being shared, we listen with respect, we listen with appreciation, and we listen with empathy. It is our commitment that every person be encouraged, heard, and appreciated, because on Race Talk with Lane and Eugene, your voice matters. Lane?
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. We are so happy to be here and to have you here to help us kick off our fifth 8-session series of Race Talk with Lane and Eugene. Man, it's I know, that's like so interesting. It's like baby steps, but big steps, depending on who you ask, right? Our topic this afternoon is Black rage. Why are Black folks angry? I'm going to introduce our speaker this morning. Willard Walden Christopher Ashley Sr. is the president and CEO of Dr. Willard Ashley Sr. LLC, Montclair, New Jersey. And under that umbrella, he conducts webinars and consultations, consulting, and coaching. Dr. Ashley is a trustee and faculty member of the New Jersey Institute for the Training in Psychoanalysis. He is also a trustee of Andover Newton Seminary at Yale Divinity School. Ashley is a vocational coach with the Center for Career Development and Ministry, and is the president and CEO of Unity with Diversity, a charitable think tank on diversity, race, and racial inequalities, and a founding partner of Mission Unbounded, a consulting company that matches assets with the mission. Ashley was the second African-American to be granted tenure and the first African-American dean of the Seminary, New Brunswick Theological Seminary. Dr. Ashley has published 4 books focusing on faith, leadership, and making an impact. And those are just some of his accomplishments. I do encourage you to follow him. And since our first meeting with Dr. Ashley, he has been a tremendous resource for us here on Race Talk. And we do appreciate you being back. Sir, welcome back. The last time you were here, we spoke about the concepts of emotional homelessness and the effects of feeling like you don't belong. And in the course of our conversation, we just touched on the topic of Black rage, and which as a concept is both suppressed by those who experience it and misunderstood and construed by those who don't understand it. And we talked about also, where do we land with white fragility? And so where that leaves me is that Black rage and white fragility bump up against each other quite a bit. We see that happening now all around us. And so often the anger that is felt by so many people of color, it just, not only does it go unexpressed, but it goes unacknowledged. And it can be very painful to watch people in power, as we were talking before we came on here, continue to try to hide the truth about our country's history. So we're happy to have you here to help us unpack this. And you've asked me to share a video before we begin, so I'm going to do that now. Let me just tell the folks who are watching here that this is a beautiful video. It is a short film, but some of the imagery is also very stirring. So just telling you that it can be a little bit difficult to watch, but it's quite lovely. So let me do that.
In case I'm next. In case the next time you gather here is because of me. Make sure to burn my body. Scatter my ashes at the beach and save a sprinkle for the LAPD. Play my last words like they're sirens, and make sure the echoes drown out their silence. In case I don't make it the next time I go to the store, go for a run, sleep in my bed, don't make me a hashtag. Make me a sentence. Oh, be simple. I died. Wait, make sure it says I was murdered. Don't leave flowers where they broke my body, but paint the stories that I left unwritten. In case the next protest is screaming my name, make sure they pronounce it with all its syllables. Let them taste my culture with their tongue. Chew the richness of where I came from. Say my name, say my name, say my name, and add my face to your timeline. Don't worry, if I'm lucky, I'll only stay relevant long enough for my life to be dragged through the mud, long enough to be crucified by nails of the skeletons in my closet, and hung by I resisted arrest. If I'm the next video you have to suffer through, don't skip watching the life drain from my eyes and just offer your prayers. Don't argue in the comments that they're not all bad. Don't say you have friends on both sides. Don't let them kneel with the crowds because they'll get back up and shoot them with gas. I want you to rage. Rage to make them see me. Rage to make them understand. Rage to let them know that I was made in His image too. Rage at the injustice. Rage at my blood poured out for nothing. Just don't call for peace. Not yet. Not until you see changes. Because sooner or later, you'll be back here again with another name on your lips. And I'll go from the next one to just another name on the list.
Dr. Ashley, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again for allowing me to come back and to share and to be part of this conversation. And so let's jump right into it. Imagine that this was an Instagram video, and it was by a Generation Z person, and it was entitled "In Case I'm Next." And I don't think that my white colleagues fully appreciate whether you're educated, whether you have acronyms after your name, whether you're from the quote unquote hood and you're on public assistance, regardless of your social status and class, if you will, that every Black person that's not high or in denial or strung out some way, shape, form, wakes up every day of our life, whether we say it out loud or we think it, in case I am next. And so you wonder why Black people are angry, why Black folks are angry, because it's a conversation you do not have to have with your children. It's a conversation you're not having with your spouse and your relatives and your nieces and nephews and coworkers. And to be quite honest and blunt, it's not taught in grad school. So unless you get clinical training that supplement what you've learned in MSWs, PhD programs, etc., oftentimes clinicians are totally clueless or ill-prepared to deal with the mindset of "in case I am next." You may have seen the video with kind of a similar kind of a sentiment where Crystal Valentine talks about Black privilege. And in her version of this, she talks about having memorized the eulogies of her relatives ahead of time. And it's Crystal Valentine's way of saying "in case I am next." And if you look on the Facebook pages of some folks in some of the Ivy League institutions that are Black, including myself at times, we've posted, "I'm not suicidal." So if somebody says I committed suicide, it's wrong, investigate it. I don't have a death wish. So if somebody says I resisted arrest and I need you to call whoever you need to call, because it is not accurate. I am not on drugs. You can check with my internist. I mean, you don't have those kind of conversations. And that's what's posted on Facebook pages of people who are quote unquote in academia with PhDs and MDs and attorneys and all those kind of things, because that's part of what it means to be not only Black in America, but to be a Black person in this 21st century. So let me just take a step back and be academic for a moment. Dr. Kenneth V. Hardy, who is well-known, PhD, tenured in a number of different places, says that rage can be a deep-seated emotional response to experiences of degradation and devaluation, and that rage builds over time as a result of cumulative suppressed emotions and voicelessness. And he says that you can distinguish it from anger, which is an emotion connected to an immediate experience. But rage is very complex emotion that can appear as anger, explosiveness, sadness, and depression. I need you to hear this part very clearly. Youth of color are often prescribed anger management interventions, while rage from the hidden wound of racial oppression remains unaddressed. I said this last time, I will say it again. In the psychological Bible, if you will, the DSM-5, there is no category, there's no outright category for racial oppression and racial aggressiveness. And the closest thing to deal with racialized trauma is post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's what they tell us, the clinicians, if you want to go there, go there and look at that as a diagnosis. And that's the closest thing that's in the DSM-5 that looks at these issues of racial oppression and internalized racial inferiority, internalized racial superiority. And so just to go back for a moment, in 1933, Carter G. Woodson, considered the father of Black History, Black History Week, Black History Month, wrote an article in 1933 that said history is a weapon. That history is a weapon. As an admirer and a distant student of Howard Zinn, who wrote The People's History of the United States, Dr. Howard Zinn, who taught at Howard University, said that it's important to appreciate who writes history. And he used as an example, if you talk to Native Americans, manifest destiny was not a great thing. Hello? If you talk to people who were from Vietnam, the war was not a great thing. And so if you talk to people of the African diaspora and you start talking about the causes of why Black people are angry, and when I shared this with my friends and relatives and colleagues on Facebook, they said, but you only have an hour. Like, exactly. They said, we're going to take a whole longer than an hour to talk about why we're pissed off. And God bless you, my brother. You're going to figure out how to put that into an hour. We want to watch just to hear how you do that. And so to summarize it, if you ask the question, why are Black people or why are Black folks angry? 400 years of America. And someone says, well, oftentimes we start with 1619, but this started in 1501, 1504, when the first Africans actually landed on these United States territory, if you will. If you ask why Black people are angry, to ask them about the Tuskegee experiment, and that we got an apology, but that was it. And then people got mad at us when we said we have some sense of vaccine hesitancy in the 21st century because we read about the Tuskegee experiment. So convince us that this is not this happening again. And enlisted people like myself to say, no, this current vaccine was developed by a Black woman and that there are Black people who have tested this and we're good. And it's okay. You should go get vaccinated. If you ask why are Black people angry, have you seen Emmett Till's grave lately? Have you seen the casket? Have you seen his body that his mother insisted that it be an open casket so people could see what they did to her boy, what they did to her child? If you ask why are Black people angry, then simply say 3 letters, KKK. Where my family personally was impacted by the KKK, where my cousin who integrated baseball, Jackie Robinson, had more stories that were never printed about interactions with people that represented that segment of society. You talk to my other cousin, Barbara Walden, who was the first Black cosmetician to have her products put in the exclusive stores that dealt with cosmetics that could put the color on Black folks. And she talked about her stories and what she dealt with as both an actress and then later on as an entrepreneur. If you ask why are Black people angry, I can piss off every Jewish person that's on this full call right now, and I usually do. And they talk about the Holocaust, and I say, I'm sorry, which one? They go, what do you mean there's only one? I said, no. Which one are you talking about? Because I'm talking about the one that started back in 1619 or before. Which one are you referring to? And usually there's a resistance, if not an outright denial, to acknowledge my Holocaust, but I must worship yours. And you ask me why I'm angry? Because you don't talk about the millions of black souls that never made it to the United States that said, I'd rather commit suicide and jump off the ship, or I died along the way of the Middle Passage. And in black circles, we call it the Black Holocaust. And because we don't control the media, we don't control ABC, CBS, or NBC, every time we start talking about it, you demonize us and arrest us and get us on tax evasion or child something or something. So we have no access to the major networks. If you look it up, Nicolas Cage owed more money than Wesley Snipes. He never saw a day in jail, but Wesley Snipes did. And if you look at the time frame that he got arrested, he was talking about black folks buying a major network. They are tied together. It's not by accident. It's not by happenstance. And so you ask why we're angry. We were talking about this before we got started. Voter suppression. I'm supposed to be so stupid that I don't realize voter suppression is targeted at me and my family and people that look like me, and try to get me to buy into, oh, no, it's not. No, it's about making sure that black folks in Georgia that said, I'm going to stand online for 6 hours, can't get a bottle of water. And you're trying to tell me that that's humane. And that's dealing with a problem that you created. Because if you had enough voting booths and places to vote, I wouldn't stand online for hours and hours to cast my vote. And it's interesting because I was just reading a segment of my book that's coming out September 1st. Where a reporter asked me if I was one of the pastors that had taken money to suppress the vote in New Jersey. And I said, no. And in the book, I say how if I even thought about that, my father from Georgia would get out of his grave, and this is my quote, would whip my ass in Macy's window on 34th Street. And they make me apologize to all the black folks that lost their lives for the right that I could vote. You ask why are we angry? Separate but equal. You ask why are black folks angry? The wealth gap. We're in the state of New Jersey, the wealth gap is 50-1. And you say, well, you guys are lazy, you're not good with money. And then we remember Tulsa, 1921, Black Wall Street, that said, no, that's not true. When we try to create wealth, the laws, the policies, and outright violence keeps us from accumulating wealth. When you ask me, why am I angry? And I mentioned this part last time, because it took until this century for someone to put out that black women not only were good in science and math, they were called computers. And that NASA put them in a room together to put together putting people in space. And that John Glenn said, unless the black woman says the math works out, I am not going up there. Why did it take until this century for us to learn that? Because when you don't control the means of production, you don't control the media, you don't control the networks, you don't control the publishing, then Carter G. Woodson is right. History is a weapon. And what gets told and by whom becomes a political statement, whereby truth doesn't always get published. Truth sometimes gets banned because of academic reasons, it's not scholarly, etc. I can tell you a list of black scholars who died heartbroken that once they started to tell the truth about blackness and anti-blackness, the very institutions that awarded them the degrees turned their backs on them, demonized them, and participated in blackballing them, and said their scholarship is off. And so if you ask why are black people angry, and we only have an hour, and part of that is to do Q&A, it's because we scream, we plead, we pray, We ask to have some sense of compassion, of appreciation of the black manifesto that we don't say out loud in case I'm next. Will there be mass protests, as the young lady said? Will I be a hashtag? Will Al Sharpton come to eulogize my body, or Jesse Jackson to say he lied to somebody? Will it end up on CNN and then be demonized on Fox News? It was my fault. In case I'm next is, yes, the anger that we have. It's this sense of the church or religion supposedly to be the place where fairness and values are lifted up, only to learn that you pick any denomination, any faith expression, they have been complicit and participated in my oppression. And if I say, ouch, I'm the angry black guy. Oh God, here we go again. You know, and this sense of, what do black folks want anyway? You had a black president for 2 terms. You've got more black people in Congress and the Senate you've ever had. What else do you people want? I want to be able to leave my home without thinking and worrying if I can get to come back. I don't want my wife to tell me as I'm going to work, honey, please be careful. There are folks out there that are crazy. I don't want to have to think that if my mother was alive and read my next book, she would be worried and say, oh, I don't want crazy white folks to have one more reason to target you, baby. You don't have that conversation with your kids. Your black Latinx mothers have this all the time. Worried about their husbands, their spouses, their kids, their relatives. And then they say, gee, I wonder, what's wrong? And so if you remember, there was a book that came out by 2 black psychiatrists, talked about black rage. And in the beginning part of the book, or in the book, they say that all blacks are angry. And white folks go, really? Yeah, even the ones that smile at you, that you supervise, that work with you, yeah, they're angry. Just they don't tell you about it, but they are. And so in some of the supervision I've been doing, consultation with some of the black clinicians, I said, do you have one black friend that you don't supervise, you have no power over this person, that you can have an honest, open conversation with that person? What does it really mean to be black? Second question, what do they really think about white people? And again, nobody that reports to you, you have no power to this person, so they can be transparent, they can be honest, they can say it the way they think and the way they feel, and there's no repercussions other than you may not invite them back to your house next time, which is okay with us. We can live with that. And to have that conversation. And it seems as though that white America can't appreciate why black folks are angry. And so we get pathologized. We get told to shut up. We get told, go play basketball and making millions of dollars and don't get involved in politics, because that's not your thing. You don't understand it. It's too complex for you anyhow. And so black rage seems to be the only thing that gets your attention. Because anything else, when we ask politely, don't be racist, we don't get the right response. I get, well, I'm not racist. I have 2 black, I know you got 2 black friends. You watch Blackish. You love watching the Lakers and the Phoenix Suns play last night. You're a big fan of the Nets and KD. And, we have this contest that says, here's why I'm not racist. But if you think about it, America was built on an entire system to watch, police, and control black people. That's the American system. It's the reason why we are angry. And here's something that I read, and I just want to share this. When black people kneel for relief, white people tell us, shut up and play. When we pray for relief, no God seems to answer us. If black people protest for relief, we're complaining too much. Black folks should be satisfied. When we describe our lack and provide historical context, we're dragging up the past again. When we comply, the police still beat us. When black people create hashtags and catch logos like hashtag say her name and hashtag Black Lives Matter, white people create hashtags like hashtag All Lives Matter and hashtag Blue Lives Matter, which serves to detract and deter us from the issues. So, what are the consequences? Grief, loss, depression, anger, rage, and silence, because we can't have these conversations out loud. And when we do try to have a conversation and simply say one sentence, somebody lied to me, you try to discourage us from having even that conversation. But my Ivy League graduate friends say, Will, somebody lied to me. I have a degree from Harvard. I'm still going through craziness. I have my PhD from an Ivy League institution. I have my law degree. I'm still going through all the crazy. Somebody lied to me about the American dream. If I work hard, do the right thing, stay out of trouble, pay my taxes, life would be great. Somebody lied to me, and I am angry about it. So we spend an entire lifetime thinking, in case I'm next, hanging over our head. That's the struggle. That's the struggle. So we got another 10 minutes or so, Lane. Let's talk before we open up for Q&A.
Yeah, thank you for that. I got I got goosebumps and all kinds of crazy feelings, when I hear you talk, but just really living in these times. I think we were talking about, there is this experience of just viscerality, like this vulnerability that is kind of there all the time. I appreciate your sharing that larger picture of the Black experience of our history. And I recognize how much of that story, the objection to Blackness, is internalized often. I had a friend of mine during the presidential race, and Biden had not become the nominee. Everybody's trying to figure out, well, is it going to be Kamala Harris, or who's going to be the running mate, et cetera, et cetera. And my Black professional girlfriend said, she's an angry Black woman. Right? And I just looked and I thought to myself, what? Like, so what? Right? Okay. I could say, no, she's not. But I can say, okay, well, so what? And aren't we all, she has a right to be angry. And what is the deal? Like, oh no, we can't back her because people will not vote for her because of the way she shows up or they experience her, right? And then there are those of us who will say, well, she's not Black enough. She's not angry enough. She's not vocal enough. She's not doing enough. She's not, right? So there's so much frustration that is also at the base of this, as you were saying, of this rage, this underlying rage. And that if you are not allowed to be self-expressed, you are angry, and then you are enraged, and then you will be silent. And so it also sometimes seems like we're playing into the hands of those who want us to just be silent, right? How do we know what to do? It's so hard, and we're trying to come together in these conversations to create change. I don't know. What are you seeing as someone who's out there doing a lot of this work, having these conversations about healing trauma and racialized trauma in particular? Where do we go with this conversation of, yes, we need to express how angry we are. We need to be constructive and smart, and we need, what do we need, sir? I guess
I will not remember them all, but there are 8 steps to dealing with racialized trauma. If you Google Dr. Kenneth Hardy, once again, he talks about healing the hidden wounds of racial trauma, and he lays out eight steps, if you will, and he says how we can apply that specifically to young people, but also to us as adults. Healing the Hidden Wounds of Racial Trauma. Dr. Kenneth V. Hardy has eight steps. And one of the things where most, I won't say most, too many clinicians can't get past the first step. Too many white people can't get past the first step, which is validation. No, you're not crazy. You are going through some stuff. And here's my story. And there's power in stories. And so often you tell your story, Lane, you tell your story, Eugene, and a white person tried to talk me out of my own story. Well, it really wasn't that bad. I mean, look, you live in Teaneck and you drive a luxury car and you got your own office in Montclair, so life couldn't have been that bad for you. Come on, Will, lighten up. You have a doctorate, you were a dean. I mean, come on, really? You're being a pessimist. You're being a glass half empty guy. I didn't realize you had those kind of issues. And but you don't want to hear my journey. I may have accomplished those things, and truth be told, it's in spite of you. It's not because of you. It's in spite of you I was able to accomplish this. And so there's just the sense of being validated, and then secondly, just the sense of that, just like your story matters, why shouldn't my story matter? And why do I have to sanitize my story to make you comfortable hearing my story? Because there's a lot of ugliness in it that was not self-inflicted wounds. There's some self-inflicted wounds. I'm a therapist. That's what I do for a living every day. I got it. I can identify those. But there are things that are not self-inflicted wounds that you don't want to hear about. And so it doesn't make me feel, oh, okay. No, it makes me angrier, because you want to not only hear your story, but drink your story wholesale. And you can't begin to understand and want to appreciate my story. How does a ninth grade guidance counselor tell me you're not college material? And so X amount of chapters, X amount of books, X amount of degrees later, oh wow, she passed away. So I couldn't say, oh, by the way, here's a signed copy of my book.
Yeah. So thank you. We're gonna open this up. So Eugene, would you just tell folks how to raise their hand, and people, you can also put your questions in the chat. Dr. Ashley, you can feel free to keep your eye on the chat if you'd like to see some questions, but we'll get them to you as well.
And real fast before I go there was something that I wanted to add to that, and because one of the things that I hear is, so why are you still talking about history? Why are you, that happened so long ago. But what we want to be aware of is that history has set it up in such a way that we are experiencing those situations now. Those situations now. It's interesting for me to go to a fine dining establishment, and everywhere I go to eat, I sit with my back towards the wall. Right? I mean, that's just something that I was taught ever since I was a child. And it's because of the history. And you say, yeah, well, then people say, yeah, but that's changed. No, the news will tell you that nothing has changed. In fact, we are seeing a lot more of it. So talking about history, or why we are continuing to go back to history, is very important for us to know what's going on now. What's going on
in real time. And it's subtle, but it's not so subtle. Right. Now all of a sudden, the second best tennis player in the world is Haitian. When she was winning tennis matches, she was Asian. And now that she says I have some mental challenges and I'm depressed, she became Haitian again. Look at how people describe. It's subtle but not so subtle.
Right.
Oh my goodness. Yes, subtle but not so subtle. Oh my goodness.
Okay, let's get this going.
Right.
Okay, so the questions. All right, hang on, Tyrone. I got you. So and for you to if you want to ask a question, you want to go down to the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. Press on that, and you will see a button that says Raise Hand. Now, if your system doesn't have that, go to the participation tab. Click on that. Find your name. And then you can raise your hand in that way. When you do get to your question or comment, You want to address that to Dr. Ashley, and also keep it down to a minute or less, because we're going to have people, I'm sure, that are wanting to ask questions. We have people lining up now, and the first one that we're going to hear from in their Q&A or their question is my brother Tyrone Cozy.
Good morning, Dr. Ashley.
Good morning.
Welcome again, sir.
Thank you.
Two things. When I was in college, I guess, or high school, college, it was shortly after, well, not shortly, but it was within a decade after Dr. King was assassinated. And I was a part of a generation that thought it was a bunch of BS to run around and be peaceful and all that stuff with Dr. King. I was more in the Malcolm X,
Mhm.
And I just thought about it. I was Black Studies minor. I was studying about the 1909 riots, I think 1919 riots, and then 1921.
Mhm.
It's interesting, the pain I felt back then for Black Wall Street burning down. I knew nothing about it until I started studying Black Studies. It's the same pain I felt yesterday when they were talking about it, and how 30 million was raised and not a dime of that has gone towards anyone in the Black community who suffered from that. So the silence thing is deep, because I was very outgoing and very, protesting and big fro and the whole bit, right? And as time went on, I had to pull that back in some kind of way just so that I wouldn't go crazy. So I appreciate your comment about
And
silence.
a colleague of mine reminded me right before we went on that I'm assuming it's changed now, but up until recently, you couldn't teach about Tulsa in Oklahoma. They were forbidden from making that part of the educational system, and that's why we say history is a weapon, because people fight me about white fragility, but these were educators saying you can't talk about these things because it'll make people uncomfortable.
Thank you.
Thank you. Amber, I know just before you go, if you put a question in the chat, please feel free to raise your hand, because we may have missed your question. And if you would like an answer, please feel free to raise your hand and ask the question, or replace it to directly to me or Eugene is good too. Thank you.
Go ahead, Amber.
Hi, Dr. Ashley. Thank you for your the video you showed and the topics that you brought up. I don't know how to really phrase my question because it's a question that I've been grappling with for the last couple of years, because the video that you showed really spoke to the feelings of a lot of younger and I say younger.
Amber, it's a little bit difficult to hear you. Could you just make sure you're speaking very clearly into the phone, please?
Can you hear me better?
Yes, a little better now. Thank you.
Okay, great. I feel like a lot of younger African American, like the younger generation, does not fully understand the onus on themselves to have to always act a certain way, speak a certain way to garner allies. It's like really a hard sell, because trying to tell people, if you protest and you make signs and you make books and you make articles and you just keep talking about it, eventually you'll get allies, you'll change people's minds, and eventually something will change. And it's really hard to say that when nothing seems to be changing. Every day you hear another person being shot. Every day you hear another Black person who is being more forthcoming about history and stuff like that being blackballed or being passed up. Like the doctor who came up with the 1619 project, she was passed up for her promotion. And so how do you convince young people to just not burn the whole thing down? That's basically my question, because I grew up different. My parents are Caribbean immigrants, and they always, and it's sad because, you know, black is black, but it's sad because for my Caribbean parents' perspective, they always consider African Americans as the docile ones, the ones that had to beg to be seen as human, the one who had to shake hands with the quote unquote white devil to, you know, get the little bit that they have now, versus in the Caribbean, all their independence was either done or through lawsuits. And so they kind of have like a higher view of esteem of themselves, because they, you know, live in predominantly black societies where anything is possible because they're the majority, so they have full autonomy. And so then they come to America and they get houses, they work really hard, they get the accolades and stuff like that, and then they turn around and they're like, why can't African Americans do it? And so their whole viewpoint is, well, that's because they're deficient or they're weak, they're the ones who had to beg for.
Okay,
So
Amber, you. Oh,
how do
okay.
you kind of how do you convince people that fighting is not the answer, like burning it all down is not the answer?
I think for some of us, we stopped trying to have that conversation. That, and I've mentioned that the last time that we were together, that we used to do, oh my God, you can't be angry. And we stopped that because saying you can't be angry didn't get us very far. So, you know, I held my tongue. I still got demoted. I held my tongue. I still got fired. I held my tongue. You still said I'm the angry black person. I held my tongue, but I'm 6'2", 225 pounds. You still said I'm intimidating and that I'm creating a havoc when I raise my voice. And you raised your voice much louder than I did, but I'm the one that got pathologized and punished for it. So I stopped telling folks about not being angry because that didn't work out well for us. And people was adding to the sense of not being validated. It took us a while as clinicians to realize, if I tell you don't be angry, I am not validating your experience. I'm saying it's okay, as opposed to no, it's not effing okay. And yes, and in fact, just the opposite. Wow, I'm glad you're angry. That tells me you're normal. If you told me you're not angry, I'd say, what drugs are you on? Because the movie I'm watching, it got me pissed off. So we have stopped having that conversation. And the Generation Z is comfortable with white allies because that's how they grew up. It's the other generations before that where we have a different history, where there's a discomfort and an earned mistrust. So Generation Z and the next one, I forgot the acronym for the next one, they're more comfortable with white allyship because that's how they grew up. They don't see what's the big deal. They don't have the history that we've had when you're older and have seen things in person, have seen people hang from trees, have seen that I'm your best boyfriend, girlfriend until I become senior VP. Now I forgot your name, lost your phone number, and who are you? You know, give us an application. Maybe we'll consider it. So that's part of it. So yeah, so it's clinically, we had a meeting, I guess, unofficially, and said, we're going to stop telling people not to be angry because that's not honest, and then doesn't validate.
Thank you. Professor Luis.
Hi, thank you, Dr. Ashley. It took me a while to get used to and consider it and now I consider it a compliment for the last 15 years when people, even as a professor at a university, would define me as a professor or educator without a filter. You know, it took me a while to say, well, God, no filter. Well, all I'm saying is the truth. All of a sudden, you have no filter. I spent over 15 years working with Dr. John Hope Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to know everything about the Tulsa race riots. I educated my class about it before it became a hit series now, which is disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always upset that during the entire debate after with Trump and Pence, that Pence was on the committee, the congressional committee, in order to give back the money to the survivors of the Tulsa race riot. They're all dead.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one is alive, but Booker, who lived in Elmford, died a few years ago. Dr. Franklin died. He was part of that, and Pence was that. And during the goddamn debates, not once did they say, Pence, you were on the, you called it jealousy instead of racism. His words were possibly they're envious. No, it's pure racism. And we need more of us not to have filters, because whether you just said it yourself, whether you're angry or not, doesn't make any difference anyway. You might well be angry because you're too, so, these are things that are really important, and like the last speaker, Hombre said, the professor from 1619, where she should have been given accolades and permanent, tenure. Her job is at risk. We're all at risk. My mother's Puerto Rican, and one of the reasons she came here was because they had a genocide. All women her age were being sterilized, during lunch hour while they were working. This country is insane. It has a mental illness. Mental illness, the epidemic here. COVID is not an epidemic considering the mental illness we have on racism. So I just, want to keep my filter unfiltered. So,
thank you, Professor. One of the ways that we see it concretely right in real time right now is around the NBA playoffs and fans attacking and spitting on players. And I watched the gymnastics, the verbal gymnastics that these commentators go through to say anything except it's racism. And I'm like, they're not spitting on the white players, they're spitting on the black players. They're not attacking the white players, they're attacking the black players who make all that money. So, I mean, we do so many different things. I want, no matter which talking head show, and I'm not demonizing Fox because CNBC and MSNBC do the same things. They do somersaults not to call stuff racism when it clearly is. They say, well, it's, cause and effect is this, cause and effect is that. No, it's racism, folks. Why can't you get that out of your mouth? Well, I know why you can't, but I mean, because then the people the sponsors will say, oh no, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Yeah, and then when they say something against you as a black person, I define myself as black and Puerto Rican, they say, oh no, we didn't mean you. Screw you. What do you mean you didn't mean you? No, we meant other. No, you meant my mother, you meant my cousin, you meant my. No, we didn't mean you. You're not part of it. What do you mean I'm not part of it? How can I not be? I want to be part of it then. So.
Yeah, I don't know if you were on last time, but last time I mentioned my wife is both Puerto Rican, Eritrean, and Sicilian, and she presents. She's darker than I am with a curly salt and pepper afro, and as a double-boarded black physician, she has some stories to tell.
Oh, and we should get together, her and I,
And we always and she was a professor at some point, and we kind of I kind of laugh, and it's kind of a source of pride but a source of pain at the same time, because I watch people basically saying so many words that she's not smart. I'm like, excuse me, girlfriend graduated medical school at 22. Okay, so
I know the drill.
Yeah.
Thank you. It is. It's and that's part of where, I mean, it is enraging to just hear people just gloss over or miss opportunities to actually speak truth to something that is so clearly there to be spoken of, and then you see, as you say, doing backflips not to call it what it is, or to say, well, we can't actually say something is racist, because then that's calling people racist, and then that makes us racist, and then like this whole down the toilet bowl spin that just makes it that much worse. I have a question about what we might be able to do, but I see that there are people answering the question in the chat, so I want to also allow Gail to answer her question. ask her question. So Gail, go ahead, and I'll come back if we need to.
Short one, and this is a question that has been bothering me for at least a year now, and I'm afraid I may sound naive, but this is the way it goes. You know, you said, I think earlier, that all Black people are angry. My question is, where is Candace Owen and her Black followers coming from? I don't get it.
So thank you. So I am a student of community organizing. On the one hand, I'm also a student of internalized racial inferiority and internalized racial superiority. I'm becoming more of a student of history. And so as a result of that, I know that the slave revolts were always dismantled because somebody on the inside had a greater love for the master, quote unquote, than they did for their own people. You know, there's an article that came out, an op-ed that came out today. I don't know if you got to read it. It's the Black guy wrote it. It says, "I'd be a Republican except for the Republicans if it was not for the Republicans." And what he was saying was actually true, that on many different levels, Black folks tend to agree with some of the stated policies and positions of Republicans. But the racism stuff is just like, I can't do this. But Black people tend to be conservative. They tend to be Bible thumpers and so forth and so on. They tend to think you don't spend what you don't have. That is that. But it's all the other stuff that they say. But you know, because of Republicans, I can't be Republican because what you don't believe in your own rhetoric or your own policy. So I said to say that there are people who, well, I mean, you know, there's a person on the Supreme Court that's a justice who you know, acts as though affirmative action was not how he became educated. I mean, so, you know, so you have those kind of experiences all the time. The thing that was most heartbreaking is that we was doing the work around Michelle Alexander and the Jim Crow piece and and started doing research and found out that the son of Thurgood Marshall is on the board of one of the industrial prison complex corporations. That answers your question, I hope, Gail. Okay.
Thank you. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Eugene, Dean is her hand up.
I was about to say, Dean.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry. I was just talking away because I'm so excited.
Unfortunately, for a lot of historical reasons, we've always had the self-hating Negro. Mm-hmm. And these are people who are so frustrated by the powerlessness of the Black community, mm-hmm. that they find if they adhere or seek out allyship in the white community, mm-hmm. they find those whites who will use them very, very wisely for that purpose. So there have always been the Candace Owens, like you had the traitors in the concentration camps who worked with the Nazis. Mm-hmm. You had the traitors on the plantations who worked against the welfare of the rest of the slave population. Mm-hmm. You'll always have people who will sell their souls to make life a little better for themselves. But fortunately, they are way in the minority.
And they get outed. And then they're no longer useful, and they're discarded. And they don't read that part of history.
Well, I was just thinking about I can't remember his name yet, the Black politician who was a Trump supporter who died.
Kane.
Yeah. And his family said after he died, they never heard from the Republicans.
Yeah.
He just disappeared off the face of the earth. He had served their purpose.
Yeah. Just to add on to what you were saying, I write that the church has been silent lately. I don't know if it's because we're compromised, we're not courageous, but the church has been silent. So after you say Al Sharpton and William Barber what are the names that are speaking out against that in any faith tradition?
Right. Right.
I think that's one of the places where I wanted to go. I think that my question is, you were talking about how important it is for people to tell their stories, and that there are a lot of platforms now for people to tell their stories. I think that's one of the reasons why Eugene and I started this platform, was for people to be able to tell their stories and to be heard and listened to, and to share experiences. How do we help people do that, right? How do we help people feel heard and supported and loved and appreciated? And because, as you say, this rage, it's got to come out somewhere, and it needs someone to hear. It needs someone to listen. How do we support people, Dr. Ashley?
Yeah, and
since we're not mental health professionals, right? In whatever we do, how do we support people?
And the person that wrote that, you're right, Cornel West, and I forgot Michael Eric Dyson. So we got 5 Black people that get to speak out. And we got zillions of churches and mosques and synagogues, et cetera, and it seems to be seemingly silenced. So how do you help people? Well, probably not the most popular thing to be recorded and said, but I'm beginning to lose some faith in that it's going to come out of the church. And the reason I say that is not because I don't believe in God and all miracles and all of that. It's not that. It's that the one thing that you can't teach is courage. I can teach everything else, but I can't teach courage. And it just feels as though that this segment of history, that there are very few people that have the courage to do what the prophets of old did and pinpoint evil with laser-like precision, regardless of who is responsible for the evil or the injustice. And I get it that too many of us have become very middle class, and we feel as though we have too much to lose if we speak out. And we don't want to lose our middle class lifestyle. I understand that. But I grew up poor. I grew up with parents that understood poverty. I grew up with parents that understood what it meant to be resourceful. And we laugh when we talk about making the best grilled cheese sandwiches with that 5-pound block of government cheese.
Government cheese.
That you needed 2 hands to cut.
Government, yeah.
But so you learned how to be resourceful. And it's kind of like one of the Rocky movies where she says to Rocky, but what do we have that we can't afford to lose? You have each other. After that, so that's kind of my struggle, is finding people that have courage, finding people that aren't afraid to lose the trinkets that we have for the greater good. And to say, if it's my urban upbringing coming out again sideways, maybe, you know what, you may beat my butt, but you're gonna know that you want to fight.
Right.
I may lose, but you're not walking away standing up with no scars on you. Let's be real clear. And I think that there's been a loss in some circles of that kind of a mindset, that it's a fight. I can't ask you nicely and genteelly to stop being racist. And you say, oh, wow, Will, you're right. I didn't see it. I'm going to stop being a racist. It doesn't work that way, because there's too much invested in these systems that perpetuate racism. The economics, people make too much money on different sides of the equation around this stuff. They're not going to willingly give it up.
Really.
I love it. There's something for me about that we're just tired of turning the other cheek. We're out of cheeks.
Yeah. Let's go with Dr. Felicia, and then we'll go back to Amber. We have their hands
Thanks
up.
so much, Eugene. And thank you, Dr. Ashley. I want to speak to the last point that you mentioned about courage, and to the impact of the person who chooses to stand up in this fight.
Mm-hmm.
In my career, early in my career, I consciously avoided going into being the diversity and equity expert because I was already an only. Mm-hmm. you can go into a field where you're dealing with theoretical topics. This topic is not theoretical.
Mhm.
For any Black person who chooses to have the courage to stand up and speak, it's going out on a limb. Even if you think you're among allies who are in favor of, if that first point of validation doesn't exist, the cost to the person who speaks is so high. It's not a light risk. It's not a, oh, I'll just stand forward and tell my story. It's a, as I'm telling you the story, I'm feeling the pain of it. And if you can't stand and feel that pain with me, I've just literally ripped my soul open and exposed it to you, and I may get nothing back from it. So I just really want to emphasize this. It's not a light little, oh, I'll just, share with you in order to help you learn and we'll all grow together. Every time we touch into our stories, we are touching into trauma.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And there's a cost for that. And so I just want to encourage people, as in your well-meaning way, you're encouraging people to tell me your story and let me listen. You need to be ready to meet them on a very deep, very personal, not walking away from the pain way. Otherwise, nothing changes. And we walk away feeling more damaged, more hurt, more in touch with what we have to cover over in order to walk our walk on a daily basis.
I think it was Steph Curry, in response to the violence happening in the NBA, said, "We're not animals in the zoo. We're not at the circus." And then so he was saying in his own way, this voyeuristic watching of us telling our stories, like you're saying, you got to do more than just say, "Oh, thank you very much for sharing."
Yeah. Thank you, Felicia. We have Amber, Lisa, Bettina, and then Jeff. Amber?
Can you hear me, guys?
Barely.
Okay, how about now?
Better?
Okay. No, I just wanted to.
You're really low. Your volume is really low.
Can we come back to her, maybe?
Yeah, you can come back to me.
Okay. Let's go with Lisa.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I'm a first timer here.
Welcome.
Really,
welcome.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here with everyone. The discussion has just been really tremendous. So I guess I just wanted to talk a little bit about, as someone who is, very much working on my allyship, I feel that, kind of what you've been talking about in terms of, rage being something that is being more comfortably expressed. I have been in a number of conversations where I have just held space for people that are speaking about their rage. And I would just like to say that it's clearly uncomfortable for me to be in that space, but I feel very honored that I was chosen as somebody to hold space for someone. And it really ends up being more of just, really not talking very much, but just really listening and really taking it all in. And I really feel like that's something I want to continue to do. I clearly have to, create, the space and strength within myself to do that. But I feel that has been, I feel very honored, to have been chosen and hope to continue to do that, as someone who wants to be a better ally.
Thank you. And Lane and I have a mutual friend and colleague, Sandy Burnaby, and she's created a number of accountability groups, white accountability groups. And my office mate, Bonnie Cushing, edited a book on that same thing. And so if you connect with Lane, she can put you in touch with some accountability groups that can help you to continue to grow in that regard. And it's interesting. Because of geographic location, I do a lot of interracial couples in Montclair area. And invariably, I'll say, if you can't handle rage, it's not going to work out. And again, I'm not talking about domestic violence. I'm talking about, if you can't handle rage, I mean, you can pay me, but it's probably not going to work out. So
it actually, it feels beautiful that, there's now this sense that there's a confidence to express that rage, and I think that that's a really positive thing. Thank you.
Bettina, and then Jeff, and then Leah. Leah, you will be the last one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I guess, Tyrone had asked, white allies have any questions. So I've been coming for a number of weeks listening and, doing a lot of reading. George Floyd's murder last year, I mean, things had been brewing before that. I mean, Eric Garner's video hit me between the eyes, and then the Trump election. So I've been doing a lot of reading. I'm coming to these. I am a social worker. I'm very interested in the accountability groups that you discussed with Lisa to hold space for conversations and I work I've been doing activism. When I get overwhelmed, I'm like, what can I do? I try and get concrete. So I've been working with a couple of groups, Center for Common Ground, whose mission is to work with people in suppressed states like Georgia and Texas to have conversations with people of color about voting rights and encouraging to vote. We're doing a lot of work on S1, and Common Cause is focusing on West Virginia, because West Virginia doesn't have a lot of people of color, but managing to vote is crucial. So I guess I'm saying I'm trying to find this balance between educating myself. I love more opportunities to listen. I'm trying to do concrete steps to, level the playing field, for lack of a better word. What else can I do? I guess is my question.
So and I know Lang has the Anti-Racist Alliance website. There are a plethora of videos, things to read, webinars, seminars as we come out of the pandemic, and people that you can unite with who are in a similar journey as yours, who are looking for you specifically to say, hey, here's another colleague, here's another ally, here's somebody else that's also in this struggle. And so I think it's a .org, Anti-Racist Alliance. I think pretty sure it's a .org, and I could put it up on the screen and Google it. Look at it. Again, there's just a plethora of resources there, and again, not more than resources, as we say in the People's Institute. There's a net that works.
Thank you.
There's a net that works. Yeah. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. For me to hear a black person's rage takes for me to have done a lot of inner work. And what's really interesting is that a while back I read a book, The Way of the Superior Man, and this is about relationships. One of the things this gentleman said, a lot of things I disagree with, but one of the things he said that I agree with is he said he's talking about a man and a woman who married or in partnership. He says a mediocre man, when his wife is really pissed off at him and really enraged and angry, defends himself or attacks his wife or walks out of the room. The superior man hears the pain behind the anger and rage. And I've learned that with my wife. I used to say, sweetie, what are you talking about? That's crazy. I'm not that. I'm not, and all that would do she would felt not heard, and she would be more pissed off. So out of my own personal inner work, I hear now, I'm with you, sweetie. I just listen, and I'm with her, and she knows that I feel what's going on with her, and I've created tremendous space for her to be that way, which is, she just said, I can take a sigh of relief now. I can just talk to you and feel comfortable, and I can feel there's space there. So I apply that now to what you guys are talking about, man. I mean, I say thank you for sharing that stuff. Thank you. And it just pushes me to open my heart more and more. But, you know, I don't think many white people have done that work. I don't think many people have done that work.
Right.
And, you know, we talk about courage, but that's be an inner structure space has to be created within each of us to be able to hear that without, and that's the path to me, is doing that kind of inner work. And I'm in a men's organization where we encourage each of us to do that inner work on our teams and our organization. And I don't know how to do that with other people. I just can take care of myself and the people who I love and do that kind of work.
So thank you very much. Within my world of psychoanalytic culture and mental health and so forth, I found that it was helpful if I frame it this way. When we do therapy with people, we talk about resistance. And we say that the best way to break the resistance is to join the resistance. So when I work with couples, I get them to join the resistance. So your wife says you're an asshole. So what happens to, you're right, honey, I'm an asshole. So now where do we go from here? I'm a racist. I got it. I'm clueless. I got it. All right. So now that we got that out the way, so now where do we go from here?
Absolutely. Jeff, doing that inner work in itself takes courage.
Yeah.
Right? It takes courage to look at self, especially when we're talking about, am I participating in a system without knowing it? And it takes courage to take a look at, that question. Am I participating in a system that promotes ... Yeah. Yeah. Listen, Leah Nelson.
Hi, Dr. Ashley. Thanks so much. I love hearing your talks. And thanks, Tyrone, for inspiring me to talk. I love hearing, I don't love, but I appreciate hearing about Black rage. I feel that rage and I understand it and I empathize so much, and I think it's totally warranted. And this Black friend I used to have at work used to call me an angry white woman, because I really empathize a lot. And I think that I appreciate everyone, all the Black voices in this room sharing about the rage, because it really needs to be heard. And I think as white allies, we need to stand up and not rely on Black people to express this rage all the time, because it is traumatic and it might not fall on listening, empathetic ears. So I think as white allies, we have to stand up and vocalize it in white spaces, like in police reform, wherever we can. I'm going to a clean slate rally tomorrow. I've been advocating for clean slate, mass incarceration, and I don't know what else to say, but I really appreciate this forum and thank you so much. It's inspiring.
Thank you, Leah. And I want to just be clear. If you're a white ally, it costs you. And I know you know that, but I just want to make sure that you know that I know that it's not a free lunch. In fact, they may come after you harder than me because you have privilege and you're throwing your privilege away for those folks. So let's be, real clear. I don't want you to have this, walk through, life with rose-colored glasses, that if you're going to join this fight with people of color, that it's going to cost you something. It's not a free lunch.
It's stressful, I know.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Whew. Reverend Lane Cobb. It's 1:24.
It is. Wow. All right then.
Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just want to get that in from my side. Dr. Ashley, thank you. Go ahead, Lane.
Well, that is fine. I want to also give Dr. Ashley a minute to get a last word, but I also really want to thank Freedom for putting such great resource information into the chat, and everyone who has put information into the chat, and your comments have been completely inspiring this afternoon, and I thank you. What I want to do is make sure that I remind you of something that is going to be available to you on Thursday. So I'm going to put this in there with Dr. Ashley's contact information also, so you can look him up. But Dr. Ashley shared with us an opportunity. It is a free screening. And let me just see that hopefully this will come out now. That is happening on Thursday. An award-winning film, The Doctrine of Discovery, Unmasking the Domination Codes by Stephen T. Newcomb, who is co-founder of the Indigenous Law Institute. And so that's happening Thursday at 7 p.m. So I put that in the chat. Also, Dr. Ashley, you can look him up at about.me/WWCA. And I'd like you all to please visit us, pardon me as I get my paperwork off the floor. Next week at the same time, we're going to be visited by author Mr. David Billings. He has conducted anti-racism workshops, yes, you know him, nationally, internationally for the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. And his first book, Deep Denial, The Persistence of White Supremacy in the United States History and Life, chronicles his experiences as a white Southerner who chose to devote his life to anti-racism efforts. And I'm telling you, you don't want to miss this. If you haven't heard this man speak, you are in for a treat, I am telling you. And so please do join us. Dr. Ashley, what say you, sir?
I'm ecstatic to pass the baton over to my colleague David Billings. It's going to be it's a continuation of the conversation. So if you're here today, please make sure that you're here for next week, and it's going to be great. I want to thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation, to be part of this. I look forward to joining you at some point in the future. I'm getting in trouble because I'm supposed to be someplace social on Wednesdays at 12 o'clock. So, thank you. I got to sneak away. I can't keep sneaking away. I get in trouble. But this has been wonderful. And I just encourage you to look at the resources that are available, to stay connected. And I welcome you to join with us in this fight, this ongoing fight.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ashley, for continuing to give us your love and support and guidance here. You are truly a trailblazer, sir. And this is good trouble, Dr. Ashley. So you can get in trouble with other people. This is good trouble, right? I'm just going to claim that.
Okay.
Folks, thank you for being a part of Race Talk with Lane and Eugene. Amber, we'll see you next week. I don't know if you got back on. We hope you did. Eugene, last words, please, sir.
Just thank you, everybody, for continuing to show up, continuing to love. And to quote Prince, the musician who passed away, he had a song, and the hook was, "Get up, come on, let's do something." Yeah.
Good trouble.
That works. Thanks again.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon. Love
Wonderful session.